G'day. My name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. Big one this week, so we're not going to waste any time. New MCU movie released. Let's get into the top 10 for this week. At number 1, surprising nobody. Surprising no one, Thunderbolts does take top spot this weekend with $4.6 million for a current total of 5.2. That is less than Captain America Brave New World, but we'll get more into the MCU charts a little bit later. I'm not as concerned about this number being as low just yet. Sinners has another great week. Week 3 dropping just 23% for another $1.5 million for a current total of $6.8 million. A Minecraft movie is finally bumped from top spot in Australia after 5 weeks of release, dropping 73% for a current total of $53.9 million. Yes, that is a big number, bringing in another $1.2 million this weekend. The Accountant 2 holds, dropping 52% in week 2, bringing in $922,000 for a current total of $3.3 million, which is pretty significant, but it still does manage to hold 4th spot. Again, it's second time in position number 4 in as many weeks. Tina actually moves up from week 2, bringing in another $500,000 for a current total of $1.2 million. Moving right along to 6 through 10, Until Dawn drops 57% in week 2. Not uncommon for a horror movie, but that's still not good, especially considering the word of mouth on that film is terrible. But it still manages to hold top spot for a second week in a row, bringing in another $300,000 for a current total of $1.29 million. Guru Nanak Jahaz brings in $275,000, taking 7th spot, which is the Punjabi language movie out of India about Komagata Maru incident. In number 8, we have Raid 2. This is not The Raid 2. This is a Hindi language crime drama out of India, a sequel to the 2018 movie. This time, an IRS officer tracks another white-collar crime, bringing in $253,000. In number 9, we have Hit, the Third Case, a Telugu language action movie out of India. This is the third, obviously, movie in the Hit franchise. And Dogman sticks around for another week. 5 weeks of release, dropping 76%, which means the other states have all gone back to school from public holidays. That's why we see 70% drops on both Dogman and a Minecraft movie. So the Easter school holidays are now back Australia-wide, where earlier we just saw drop-offs from Queensland. But now it is fully back to school. And that is our top 10 for this weekend. Let's take a quick look at a chart we don't get to look at all that often. The top 5 openings of 2025. As expected, Thunderbolts is on this list, and as you can see there, Minecraft movie is still leagues in front, followed by Captain America Brave New World at $5.3 million, a Minecraft movie at $13.6, Thunderbolts at $4.6 million, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy at $4.4 million, Paddington in Peru down at $2.9 million, and dropping off the top 5 openings is Snow White with, I think it was around $2.8 million. So we have a new top 5 opener of the year, but I think Disney would have wanted that to be higher, as it did do better in the international and US domestic markets, but that's not what this show's about. But that's our top 5 openings of 2025. And let's take a look at Thunderbolts opening in compared to the rest of the MCU in their Australian domestic opening weekends. Now, a really interesting thing is Thunderbolts takes the exact same position that Captain America Brave New World took. It's not a great position, being the 5th lowest MCU opening movie of all time in the Australian domestic market, but it's kind of interesting. So Captain America Brave New World opened to $5.3 million opening weekend. Thunderbolts opened to $4.677 million. Captain America The First Avenger, unadjusted for inflation, opened to $4.66 million. Thunderbolts is only ahead Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, The Incredible Hulk, The Marvels, and Captain America The First Avenger. However, I have less concern about Thunderbolts compared to Captain America. I would be surprised, and I'm gonna put this on the record. I think Thunderbolts will end up with a total higher gross than Captain America: Brave New World. We'll see if that holds true, and I will hold myself accountable. But it has a much better word of mouth. It got a much higher cinema score. Captain America: Brave New World got a B-, and Thunderbolts got an A-, which is much more in line with the rest of the MCU. The higher the cinema score, the higher the legs. So the higher that this movie might go on, and it's got nothing major coming out this weekend, good word of mouth last weekend, this weekend gone, into no real big movies coming out this week, it does give Thunderbolts a little bit of a runway to catch up. So we'll see how that holds up. However, if we look at the MCU by phase, where we can see the opening weekends of every Marvel movie ever released and how much they brought in opening weekend, unadjusted for inflation. You can see the blue section, which is the current phase, is still far below the green, the yellow, the orange. It's probably on par with phase 1, which is not where they wanted to be, but we'll see how they go from here. They've got a long way to do and they've got a big plan, but yeah, good luck. Just a quick update on my MCU Aussie Hype Chart metric, which, if you haven't seen this one, this is the amount of people, approximately, that went to see Marvel movies on their opening weekend for that year. So, starting with 2008, 734,000 people, which is the amount that these movies brought in opening weekend, divided by the average ticket price of that year. Gives us a loose number of how many people rocked up to go and see it on opening weekend. That's why I call it a hype chart, because people that are excited about a movie go and see it opening weekend. 2008, 2009, and 2011, because there was no MCU movies in 2010, it was around 750 to 800,000 people showing up to all the MCU movies released that year. So if there was 1 million people that rocked up on this chart and there was 2 MCU movies, then it was either, 500,000 people going to each of them, 600,000 to one, 400,000 to another. It's just how many people rocking up per year. And then in 2012 and 2013, we were leading up to Avengers and the MCU started to get a lot more traction, up to 1.5 million people in 2013, a drop in 2014, back up to 1.5 million people in 2015 and 2016. 2017, 18 and 19 are current peak MCU years. That is our lead up to Endgame and Infinity War and everything massive popping off for the MCU, bringing in 2 million people, 2.7 million people, 4 million people going to Marvel movies on opening weekend in 2019. Then, obviously, nothing in 2020. In 2021, 2.6 million people. Most of that was from Spider-Man No Way Home, the massive Spider-Man crossover event. 2022, down to 2.4 million people. And that was just from 3 movies, Thor, Multiverse of Madness, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And here's the crutch. 2022 to 2023. All the way back to 1 million people. 1.1 million people over 2023, which was 3 movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and The Marvels. In 2024, they had just over 1 million, but that was just one single movie, which was Deadpool and Wolverine. And in the current year, 2025, off 2 movies, we're at just under 600,000 for the year. We've got one more MCU movie on the calendar for 2025, so we'll see where we end up. But if it's only around that 1 million, we have definitely peaked MCU. There's no other way to look at that chart. But I'm going to continue to monitor this. This is one of my favorite ones to monitor. So I know I ran on a bit of a ramble, but this is, I think, an interesting indicator. I'd be curious to run these numbers on the US domestic market and see if the chart looks the same. We'll see how we go. And let's take an updated look at the 2025 top 10 for the Australian box office. Not too much movement this week. A Minecraft movie still at number 1 with $53.9 million. Paddington in Peru in number 2 at 17.7. Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy at $16.5 million. Captain America Brave New World at 13.8. At 5, we have Snow White at just over $9 million. A Complete Unknown is at 6 with $8.6 million. Conclave still holds 7th with $8.6 million. Dogman moves up with $8.3 million, bumping Nosferatu down at just over $8 million, which that is its final Australian domestic gross, so it is highlighted in green. Nizar 2 holds 10th spot, with Sinners rapidly closing the gap. Will Sinners get into the top 10 by next week? It very well could, so we'll keep an eye on that, but that's how it currently looks for weekend 18. And moving along to see what's releasing theatrically this week. Not too many movies wanting to go head to head with a big MCU release, but we do have a few smaller titles. First up, 8th of May, we have Ocean with David Attenborough, the latest, probably stunning and gorgeous nature documentary that will probably do well in IMAX, as his movies always do. We have Clown in a Cornfield, the latest from director Eli Craig, who directed the fantastic Zombieland and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, with a new horror movie about a father and a daughter moving to a small town where clown-related shenanigans commence. And lastly, wide release, we have Shadow Force, a new action movie from director Joe Carnum, which, I'll be honest, didn't look great in the trailers, but he did direct Bad Boys for Life, The Grey, and Cop Shop, all of which I enjoyed. So we'll see if this new action starring Kerry Washington, Omar Sy, and Mark Strong is any good. Moving across to limited release, 8th of May, we have Sylvanian Families, the movie, A Gift from Freya. Originally a 2023 release that's finally made its way to Australia. People that love that one will already be lining up. The Wedding Banquet, a new romantic comedy directed by Andrew Ann and starring Bowen Yang, Lily Gladstone, and Kelly Marie Tran. With or Without You, a new Australian movie from writer and director Kelly Schilling, starring Marta Dusseldorp and Melinda Vidler, about a mother and daughter on a road trip to get a start on a new life. And lastly, in limited release, is Monsieur Aznavour, a French biopic about the singer Charles Aznavour. I'm not familiar with him, but he is very well regarded, but it is in very limited release, so you may have to hunt if you're trying to find that one. Not too many things on the streaming front, but on 8th of May, we do have the new series Forever, a new Netflix series from Mara Brock Akil, starring Lovie Simone, Michael Cooper Jr., and Wood Harris, about two childhood friends reunited as teens that fall in love with a coming-of-age tale. And returning on the 8th of May is Poker Face returns for Season 2 on Amazon/Peacock from creator Ryan Johnson, starring Natasha Lyon. I can't wait for this one. I love Season 1. I even nabbed a few props from it. Small things, but they were just going cheap. So I really enjoyed Poker Face. And The Blood of Zeus also returns for Season 3 over on Netflix. Only 4 movies this week for the Cinechums Movie Challenge for the theme of animals. That was due to Thunderbolts being on my schedule, as well as me picking up Expedition 33 and taking a bit of my movie time away. But this week's theme was animals, not insects, fish, or birds, which eliminated a few of my initial picks. But first up, and it's a bit of a loose connection, but from 2021, Nobody, directed by Ilya Nashula and starring Bob Odenkirk. For challenge eligibility from a certain point of view, a certain perspective, this movie could be interpreted as one-man journey to get a cat. There's a lot of themes there. You just have to, pick away at them. A bit of a stretch, but this was part of a rewatch for me to prepare for the sequel coming up later this year. Great action movie gem from a few years ago if you haven't seen it. Next up was The Call of the Wild from 2020, directed by Chris Sanders and starring Harrison Ford, Dan Stevens, and Omar Sy. For challenge eligibility, the movie revolves around a dog called Buck. I wanted to enjoy this one more than I did, but my brain could not get over the Uncanny Valley CGI dogs. The movie itself was interesting, and I guess if you can get more on board with that Polar Express type action adventure, you might have a better time with it. But for me, I was just expecting something more real, and what I should have watched instead was a movie about sled dogs from 2019 called Togo. Enough with dogs. Next was a street cat named Bob from 2016, directed by Roger Spottiswoode and starring Luke Treadway. For challenge eligibility, it's obvious about a cat named Bob. An interesting movie, and based on a true story about a homeless busker and recovering drug addict that has his life turn around when a cat wanders into it, a stray cat from the street. It was a little bit hard to watch at times, but that's only because, themes of recovering drug addiction and homelessness are never overly pleasant. But the movie itself was a feel-good movie. So, yeah, your mileage may vary with that one. Lastly, from 2024 was a catch-up movie of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, directed by Jeff Fowler, starring Jim Carrey, Ben Schwartz, Keanu Reeves, and James Marsden. For challenge eligibility, it's about a blue hedgehog. A really fun movie in line with the rest of the series, but this latest one included the fan favourite of Shadow, and it felt much more self-aware of how ridiculous and over the top the series is, but it was still a good time. I had fun with it. Taking a look at this week's Cinechums Movie Challenge with the theme of multiple stories or perspectives. So we have things like one story, multiple perspectives, with a few examples, multiple connected stories, or anthology series. So we've got a few examples there. Adaptation, Crazy Stupid Love, Hoodwinked, 21 Grams, Mulholland Drive, obviously. A few things like Contagion, or Go, or Kinds of Kindness from the last year. But why don't we take a look at my shortlist? For my shortlist, I have things like Rashomon, Southland Tales, Sucker Punch, Cop Shop, Freaky Tales from this year, Sin City, the sequel, Cloud Atlas, Go, Mission Impossible, with a few things there, so we'll see how we go. That is it for me this week. Join me again next week where we eagerly look at the Week 2 performance of Thunderbolts, or if it's going by a new name by then, maybe we'll call it that, but I'm holding off a week. Apart from that, there's not a lot else releasing this week coming up. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fairly quiet week, giving Thunderbolts a full runway to do what it can before some other big titles start releasing further on in May. So we'll see how we all go, but that is it for me this week. Tune in again next week, and we'll crunch more numbers. Bye!